Hello from Boston. We are sitting here in the lobby of the Park Plaza Hotel. If you hear music in the background, it's definitely mine. Just kidding, I have no idea whose it is. It's just playing. And before we get started today about extending classes, I want to just go through an overview of how I solved our last problem with the project, which was to create a model view controller representation of a store's inventory system. So here we have our store controller. We have imported various necessary libraries to handle action events and also our array lists. Here's our standard variable declarations. We have a view, a model. We also have an action listener for when the user hits the submit button, as well as a list of all the items in the store that we're going to want to keep track of. Here's our startup logic. We instantiate the array list, which is important to make sure that there's memory for it. We create the view, and we make sure that the view is visible to the user. Then we create the action listener that's going to listen in on that submit button. And when that submit button is triggered, we're going to call the action perform method, which is going to create a new item, which is a method in this class that I'll show you in a second. It takes two arguments, the name of the item and the number of the item that we want to add. Finally, we attach that action listener to the submit button. Right. Here's our create new item method. What it does is it creates an ID number, basically just an index number, the next one in the list. It also creates a new version of our data representation, our model, so it creates a new store item. It adds this item to the list. And finally, in our view, it calls a method that we wrote, adding a new row, that just adds some text to the list. All right, let's jump over to our model real quick and look how it's laid out. Here's our store model. We have three properties, the item name, the ID, and the inventory. We have our constructor that takes these properties as arguments so that we can set them. We have the ability to add an item and remove an item, which may become useful later, but it's not useful right now. All right, and finally, let's pop over to our view, which we've set up like this. We have two text fields, one for the name of the item, one for the number of the items. Here's that submit button. And then finally, this is a new thing. This is a text area. You guys haven't seen that yet, but same as every other label, it's just another variable. We called it text area, so you can see all of our variables automatically generated here. And then here's what our class does. Very simply, you can tell it to add a new row with the string name and the inventory, and it just creates a new row of text in that text area. So if we run it real quick, we'll see how it works. Or real slow. We can run it real slow too. I think if I had like sponsors for every time there was a pause. Oh good, okay, it's running. Alright, so if we type in the name of an item we want to add to the store, like a dog, and the number of them, lots of dogs, let's add 10 dogs. There we go. And now we can type cat, and we don't like cats, so we'll just add one. And then we could also add baseball bat, and we could add a few baseball bats. All right, and it goes ahead and it adds these to our store. All right, so that's the basic project from last time. What we're going to talk about today, though, is extending classes. So you guys need to know what it means to extend a class, and it's basically taking all of the methods and all of the properties of a class and just adding some additional functionality onto it. You'll need to do this frequently because many times when you're creating data structures, you're going to have a very basic and core data object that needs to have various iterations on itself. A good example is like a store selling bicycles or cars. Okay, so if you're a Ford dealership, you sell a bunch of Ford cars. But a car has a body, it's got four wheels, hopefully. It's got a bunch of properties, but you could also sell the Ford Fiesta or the Ford Fusion or the Ford Taurus. And those three, Fiesta, Fusion, Taurus, those could extend your car class and have additional properties that only those specific cars have. It's pretty useful. So let's go ahead and create a new extension of our store model class. Let's pretend that you're looking at a store. We can call it a pet store. But this extension is actually going to be a physical animal. It's going to be a living, breathing thing. So we'll create a new class. And you can actually just do it the same way that you're used to. We can call it store animal. And you can leave everything else the way it is. The only thing we actually have to do is in the class declaration of public class store animal, we have to type extends store model. Okay. After that, what you need to just type is you need to import store model into store animal, because otherwise store animal doesn't know what store model is. And you can see actually in our view that it's done that. Where has it done that? It's done that here, where it extends the JFrame class. Okay, so we need to just extend this. We can do that. We can do import store model. No, that's not working. An error on this, and the reason why is because in our store model class I've actually included a constructor right here with parameters in the construction. So that's actually an advanced constructor, and all you need to do is go into the little light bulb, and this actually gives you some hints. We're going to add the constructor right here. Okay, so this means that whenever we create a store animal class, we need to include the same 3 fields that store model does. Right, but what if we wanted to include additional fields in store animal? For example, if that animal had a name, we could say string animal name. Okay, and even though that's different than what's in store model, because we've called these 3 the same thing, store model will still know what these are. But we can also give it an additional parameter that only store animal will use. Okay, so that's one example of how class extensions are a little bit different. We're going to actually just do return self, or return this. Yes, no, what is it doing? Whatever. Oh, okay, and then it'll say return this. I don't know what it's saying. Okay, we're going to leave it for now. Okay, so that's that. Now, store animal will still have the same, item name, ID number, inventory number as store model, but we also need to give it an additional variable for the animal's name. So right where we would do it for the store model, which was right under the class declaration here, we'll say public string animal name. That's it. Okay, and in our constructor, we'll say animal name equals animal. Let's give it a little bit different. We'll call it pet name. Pet name. Okay, I have no idea what just happened. I broke it. What did I do? String pet name. I don't know why it was giving me that. Very weird. Okay, it doesn't seem to like what we're doing. We're going to do it anyway. So string pet name, and then we can set the name of the pet to animal name. I don't know why that wouldn't work, but hey. It's getting us. Alright, so that's just one example of a way to extend a class. Whenever we wanted to call store animal instead of the regular store model class, we'd probably want to include like a checkbox or something like that in our store view to allow our user to say, okay, this item that I'm inputting is actually an animal, or to let us know that we should use the extension instead. That's one trigger. Another trigger you could say is like if it's a group of items. So we could have a store model extension that's for like a group of items. For example, a dozen eggs. Maybe we want to list our eggs by dozen instead of how many single eggs, since no store sells single eggs. That's crazy. Unless they're ostrich eggs. I don't think you see a dozen ostrich eggs. Anyway, so we could do that too. Those are all ways that we can use class extensions for our purposes. So what you're going to do next is we're going to stop here. You're going to go on to your Schoology. We have a problem for you to solve involving writing an extension for your item models that you guys have developed, and we'll work on that together. See you soon.